Okay, ladies and gents, so today we're going to be talking about classifying three-dimensional figures. And if you take out your notes, you're actually going to realize that there are 5 different ways that we're going to classify these bad boys. The very first shape that we're going to talk about is something called a prism. And if you see by the definition, it's a solid with 2 bases that are congruent and parallel. Now that's extremely important for you to remember that they are congruent and parallel, those bases. And why? Because if you look over to this right, you see a prism. However, we can be more specific in naming that prism based off of which type of bases it has. And so the 2 congruent and parallel faces, or just flat sides of the shape, are actually these 2 triangles that I'm going to highlight. And so not only can I call this a prism, I can actually call it a triangular prism because it has bases that are triangles. The next type of shape that we're going to talk about is a pyramid, and that is a solid with 1 base, and all the other faces will meet at a point. And so if you're looking over to the right, again, we can call this shape a pyramid, but we can get even more specific based off of what type of base it has. And so if you notice, the base here is a triangle. So hopefully you guessed it, we can call it a triangular pyramid because the base is a triangle. The next type of shape is actually going to be a cylinder, and so a cylinder is like a prism, but instead of having a polygon as its base, we actually have circles. So it's a prism with circular bases. A cone is a pyramid with a circular base, so again, it meets at a point. And a sphere is actually going to be a solid in which every single point on that sphere is equidistant from the center. It's kind of like a 3-dimensional circle. Before I move on, I just want to teach you a couple little tricks that I have to help me specifically determine between a prism and a pyramid. So for the first one, for a prism, for some odd reason, I like to think of the word prison when I say prism. And I imagine that I have a little dude standing inside of a prison cell, and these flat edges that come down, those are like the bars that are holding him in. And a pyramid over here just reminds me of like the Egyptian pyramid, so that's how I remember what a pyramid is. A cone, I bet you all think about this, reminds me of an ice cream cone, except if I have my ice cream cone flipped upside down like that, I'm not going to have any ice cream. And then a sphere just reminds me of a ball. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to go through and classify all the following figures below. When it comes to prisms and pyramids, we're going to give it the most specific name that we possibly can. What does that mean? That means you must identify the bases to each of these figures. So like, for example, in number 1, I can tell that it's a pyramid, but what type of pyramid? Well, the base down here tells me that it is a rectangular pyramid because that's the base, a rectangle. Okay. And number 2, I'm thinking about ice cream right now. That just is a cone. Number 3, so again, if you notice here that we have what looks to be like a prison, if I could imagine that I had somebody standing inside of that cell. Now the question is, what kind of prism is this going to be? Well, find your 2 bases that are, again, if you remember, congruent and parallel. So in that shape, the congruent and parallel faces or flat surfaces are actually these 2 triangles right here. Okay. And so what type of figure is that? That's actually going to be a triangular prism. Okay. Oh, and I should have gone back over here and I should have highlighted this base too, because my directions, if I would have been reading them, tell me to classify each solid, but to highlight the base or the bases. So in number 4, if you look here, this is definitely a pyramid. We just got to discover which type. So you can find your singular base, which is right here. And you just need to determine, okay, what type of figure is that. So let's count the sides. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There are 6 sides, so that means that that shape is going to be a hexagonal pyramid. And number 5, that is a cylinder. Again, because it is a prism with a circular basis. So let's highlight those. And in number 6, it is a prism, but what type of prism? Now, in number 6, I do want to say that if you want to figure out what your bases are here, you have a couple different options, because for this type of prism, you could find multiple bases. For example, I could say that these are my bases right here. And why could I say that those are my bases? Because 1, they're congruent, and 2, they are parallel. I also, if I wanted to erase those, I could have said that the top and the bottom bases are my bases. Again, why? Because they are 1, congruent, and 2, parallel. But it doesn't end there. I could have said the front and the back were also my bases. It doesn't matter, because each shape in that figure that I already highlighted or could have highlighted to call my bases, they're all rectangles. So this is going to be a rectangular prism. Okay? And so what I want from you is I want you to try to do 7 through 12. I don't think it's that difficult, but if you have any questions, I will totally answer all of them when you come in tomorrow.